So if I could just kick off, I hope I kind of expressed an optimistic tone when I talked about headroom as opposed to these kind of roadblocks around talent, investment. What do you as a panel think is holding back the trajectory of digital in terms of mod? So maybe I'll start with you.
Well, I just continue with my thought, is that I think many clients have realized that essentially it's not about advertising, and unfortunately the way we measure digital is just in a portion of digital advertising versus other advertising. Some of my clients have realized that they have to fundamentally transform, and that means money has to go into changing the way they organize, the way the processes are set up, and the way the technology is now bought and delivered. So this is why I feel that there won't be a straight line just increasing digital advertising or advertising in general. The nature of advertising and nature of marketing will change to support the shift into custom experience. So that's what I sense, in addition to all the other little bumps in the road that we have all experienced.
John?
What he said. I'll say a couple things just so I don't. I think that that's exactly right. What we see within our customer base, 5 years ago, it was easy to go into a customer, and I'm speaking of a brand here, and talk to them about how they could make money by buying more search advertising or by investing a little bit more in display or email, etc. And that was a fairly easy sale, but it was a siloed sale. And what we're seeing now is as you move up the organization and start to see the business owner of this investment be a vice president, a senior vice president, a CMO, they start to think much more holistically. It's not just a direct response investment that they're making in advertising. It's an investment they're making in their digital infrastructure for how they communicate with consumers across all of these channels. Any single channel becomes less important. It's more the orchestration across all of them. And that is non-trivial. And the barrier is less about technology, I believe, than it is about the cultural changes and the people involved and how do organizations shift their business processes. Everything from how does the CIO, CTO, CMOs, organizations start to blend? How does one have to give up some turf to the other potentially so that reporting structures support this new digital face that a company has to present to the consumer? So I believe it's mostly about talent and the intellect around the organizational challenges.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that anything's holding it back. In the UK, about I think 40% of ad spend is now digital, and in 5 years' time, we think 60% will be digital. As I walked in here, I don't think, has anyone here got a newspaper? Hands up if you actually have a newspaper. I walked in, everyone was on their cell phone, no one was reading a newspaper. So to your point about that sort of disconnect, I think that will get corrected. I think clients...
why is it taking so long?
Why is it? Well, because you can either be ahead of something or behind something, by definition. And by definition, I think companies tend to be behind consumers. I mean, it's a consumer technology revolution we're living in, right? Who are the companies that are doing well? The companies that are being led by consumers, Google, Apple. I think consumer technology is revolutionizing corporate technology. Look at how many companies struggle. All their employees want Apple devices or Google devices now, and yet they're supplying other devices. So I think consumers are driving this change, and companies are kind of having to run to catch up or to keep up with consumers. But there's no doubt, that they will. Look at, most e-commerce companies do 20% of their sales on mobile. It may not be a big ad sales platform, but it's still pretty important. And yes, I'd say there's no way even 20% of their digital investments are going to mobile today, but it will keep up or catch up.
Can I add just one point? Because I think we're all saying the same thing. The future is digital. We don't argue that. It is digital, but not for the sake of digital, but digital being the heart of the future enterprise that would impact everything that we do. So it's not that the spending on digital is slowing. It's In fact, it's increasing significantly. It's just going into many things that were considered auxiliary to what used to be just pure advertising.
But Anatoly, it's like without sort of Accenture's in the transformation business, so everything for you is a transformation from A to B. You know, we're in the marketing services business, so we look at it in a different way. I mean, I think it's all about it's about positioning. He's in the software business, so it's all about finding right.
It's all about software.
Exactly.
So let me just touch on a point John made. You talked about culture, which one of the most important factors is people. Now, 10, 12 years ago, marketing services pretty much involved business and creative people, and if you want to have them as distinct entities. We now have data scientists and technologists very much amongst it. What has that changed in terms of the dynamics of marketing for you, in terms of collaboration and the stakeholders involved?
You know, we make this joke that a lot of people back in the old days got into marketing because they were told that math wasn't involved. which is clearly not the case. And I think the underlying theme of this conference is math. Math needs inputs. Data is the input to the system that drives the segmentation, that drives targeting, which can maybe be perceived a little bit as a negative word, personalization. And I like to think of what are the bottlenecks that happen, assuming we had infinite personalization. Let's assume I could deliver a personalized experience to every single one in this room when you came to, let's say, my website. The biggest challenge I would have is where in the world do I go to get content for this many people that is unique to you? And that's where, having organizations that can supply the content and then the strategy around that content, and then that content and strategy has to get instanced in social. It has to be within your mobile app, within your web, within your email, even within your call center or your direct mail. Consumers don't have affinities to channels. They have affinities to brands. And that's the transformation that people that I'm seeing organizations go through, which is it's so hard because it has organizational implications.
So there's a theory that Silicon Valley is outpacing Madison Avenue in the sense that the argument goes that they're going to keep creating these kind of marketing technology platforms that become ever more complex and powerful, and by definition, less intuitive. Are we in danger of having kind of the jet fighters that the practitioners can't fly?
So maybe I can address that. So I think to the previous point, we talked a bit about mad men and math men, mad men and math men. So you need to have both skills. And I think successful marketing programs need ideas and technology. I think there's a danger that the digital part of a business disappears to like balancing on the head of a pin, right? Where the amount of analysis that goes into a $50,000 digital campaign compared to a $5 million TV campaign is out of all proportion to the size of the budget and the degree of optimization. So we do it because we can. So I think there's an element of that that's true in what you're saying, in the sense that we hope, because we can overanalyze stuff, we overanalyze it. Still, if you can make things more efficient, you're going to make them more efficient. And it's about both things. Success for our clients is ideas, and if I'm targeting everyone in this room, I don't necessarily want a different idea for everybody in this room. I want to have one idea that engages population. So look at sort of the great digital campaigns of the last sort of year. The Red Bull space jump, that's one idea. It was probably executed, I think your colleague Matt told me it was at some point 6% of all internet traffic was that Red Bull streaming video, and they had to virtually switch YouTube down at the time. So there's a lot of optimization, a lot of technology involved in getting that out, but there's an idea behind it. Look at the best Twitter campaigns, there's an idea that uses the technology. So I think it isn't an either-or question, and if we descend down the either-or pattern, we'll end up in the wrong place.
Well, speaking of Red Bull, by the way, I don't know if you know, but behind it there was Accenture distributing all this traffic. So this is
There was an Accenture consultant.
But just to follow up on it because we're also moving into a world that is much more integrated. We need left brain and the right brain, and even Accenture now has creative people who are not there necessarily to execute campaigns, but thinking of ideas that we need to be able to bring to our clients to drive this transformation. So we have to create a world now that matches creative, analytical, technology skills. And it's not easy. I think that many of us have struggled on how to bring it all together.
Yeah, and I'll agree with both of them, and let me give you the pure technologist perspective. I think our challenge, if I look at Adobe and the technology companies in general, we can whine a lot about there not being enough people out there to do the work, but our part of that problem is that the tools are still too hard to use. They're difficult, they're not integrated as much as they should be. The workflows across the different areas of the tools are not as integrated and as intuitive as they should be. And if we want to have 10 times more people in this industry that are effective and not have the huge training costs of getting them all trained, we have to make these tools easier to use. And I think people will opt for the easy to use versus the very powerful in a lot of cases. And so technology my pitch is technology has to get a lot easier.
So on that note, John, there's been a variety of pieces talking about technology companies, particularly point solutions, not being purely tech players, and actually providing services around campaign management and optimization. And the media has alluded to agencies, for example, throwing the work over the fence. Is that an output or a shortcut that the technology companies have taken because the practitioners can't operate the tools?
Well, I think it's a timing issue, right? So the technology companies invested in tools that allowed you to do things like, buy search keywords and buy lots, hundreds of thousands, millions of search keywords. It was complex to do. And so in order to get people to really use it effectively, you had to add some services by people that really knew the tools. And so I think in a lot of ways, technology companies were forced to include services with their tools, not because they wanted to be services businesses, but because they wanted people to effectively use this technology that they have created. And my view, at least from Adobe's perspective, is that the services business is much better done by professionals in services companies. Doing services in a services company is very different than doing services in a technology company. And our view is the quicker we can grow this industry, grow the talent and the partnerships in this industry to have those teams do the services around the tool operation, but then the higher level stuff, which is, operating the tools is interesting and it's must have, but it's not the transformational part of the business, the cross-campaign part of the business, the real strategic part of the business that I think is the barrier to growth for all tech and services businesses.
I think I look at it a slightly different way. I think that if you're the market leader, you can make good money in technology. If you're not the market leader, unfortunately, the marginal cost of technology is zero and the prices tend to be zero. And so a lot of ad tech firms are forced into being media networks because it's the only way to monetize their technology. And ultimately what creates value is customer relationships, either end customer relationships, let's say like Google have, or client relationships like, let's say, WPP have. And so ad tech companies to generate money, how did the ad serving business start? Okay, we'll give you some technology and we'll sell your ads and take a 30% cut of selling your ads. And those economics still work today, 15 years later. So I think that sort of the law of economics drives people to bundle services and technology. And what I guess from a WPP perspective we need to do is think about the bits of technology that allow us to operate our business. So I'd say, Xaxis and the technology that runs Xaxis, or compete, the online panel technology that runs that, or Hogarth, which is production business technology that. So those are sort of technology-driven businesses, from let's say an AKQA, where we go and build a piece of technology for the client using, CQ5, which is, I guess probably the world's hottest, or one of the world's hottest software products today. So I think there's a two different things and ways of looking at our business and technology and changing both of them.
Can I,
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, so add to it is that with all the deference to Adobe that collected most impressive tools in the marketing space, there will never be one vendor who would be able to bring together everything that our clients need. So by definition, even if Adobe would package its professional services with its product, there are other tools and systems that you would need to integrate with. So therefore, there needs to be a natural partnership between consultants and technology vendors. Last time I've counted, there were 300 vendors catering just to marketing services space. So it is very complex for our clients to be able to even understand what's out there, never mind make sense of different tools and bring it together.
Okay, so 20 years ago, some of traditional advertising worked really well, and there was a scientific element to it, particularly the kind of DR side of it. Some would argue that a lot of the other stuff was more superstition than science. We've moved to an era in digital marketing where business performance, not just marketing metrics, but business performance is hardwired into the campaigns. What are the implications for businesses like yours when you have this elevated level of accountability to business performance with your clients? How has it affected how you do business and the services you offer? Mark?
So I think I'd argue we've always been accountable for our clients' business performance, perhaps sort of less directly and less analytically. I think search, if you start with search, is fantastic. Clients know if they spend X, it's Y in sales, and we can measure or benchmark how good we are at doing that. So there's a bit of the business which is directly accountable, and there's a bit of the business which, as you say, still has the magic. And I don't think the magic is ever going to go away. Look at the meerkat and the iterations and the variety on that. So I don't think it's changed things that fundamentally, to be honest.
And is that a flaw?
No.
Okay.
I do believe that some things have changed where, for example, one example I generally bring is a real client that spends some money into digital advertising with one of the agencies whose objective is to bring as many people as possible to the website as cheaply as possible. Then you have another agency that their objective is to keep people on that website for as long as possible. But if you look at the end-to-end experience, this particular company has been buying keywords on Google, by the way, and driving people to a website for a product that these people didn't want. So at the end of the day, you spend good money and you just piss somebody off, right? So those types of things happen, and I think business performance right now is much, it has to be elevated. It is much about building a business relationship with this particular consumer, which requires different types of measurements and different types of processes behind it. In order to, for example, affect NPS that many clients adopted as one of the business KPIs, it requires many, many different things, not just the most brilliant creative, but also great content and products, and many of those things that normally found even outside of marketing. So how do we bring it all together and then measure it is a big question right now.
John, I don't know if you want to touch on that, but one thing I could possibly just go on to is when I look at your individual service layers of your companies, there's a real kind of scent of overlap. So, Accenture moving into Fjord and the work on BMW, for example, globally. John, you talked about services, and Mark, WPP 3 or 4 years ago was probably the one that was much bullish about your technology credentials, and obviously the acquisition of 24/7 came about that. How do you see that panning out in terms of WPP? Where are you heading?
So I'd say, you know, if we were an advertising agency or marketing services firm, in 5 years' time we'll be a marketing, data, technology company. I think it's kind of one way of looking at the skills that we'll have, you know, in terms of the types of people we'll employ, the types of work that we'll do with clients. And there's no doubt that we have, you know, a new set of competitors. At one level we have the, you know, the frenemies like Google. And then, you know, another level we've got, you know, Accenture, Deloitte Digital. Some people say McKinsey, they don't think McKinsey is such a competitor. And then another level we have, you know, IBM, you know, with their services business. I think less extent Adobe, because I don't think their services business is really substantial, and it's mainly about enablement. So I think the bigger competitors is sort of, and the analysts have started to focus on it, the sort of the IT, the IS firms. And in a way, I'd say that's an opportunity for us, because we're kind of not in that business in a substantial way, and we can get into that business, I think, through focusing on our clients. Because I think if I'm a client, I'm thinking, you know, who do I want to design my e-commerce experience? People that really understand the consumer, people that can really link all that stuff together, or people who are in the, you know, efficiency and, how do I put this politely, you know, in the sort of efficiency business. So, you know, we think about, you know, I think the likes of the sort of IT consultants think about the tech stack. It's HR, finance, marketing, and this kind of efficiency along that spectrum. And we think about the customer. We start with the customer, you know, building the brand, driving the customer to the website using Google and other tools, and then running the site for the client. So we bought Salmon, a UK e-commerce business, in January. They built the Argos website, which by some measures is the #2 website in the UK, now actually in partnership with Accenture in some respects. But so we have like heavy e-commerce skills, and I think those are the skills that we need to build out. So I'd say, in many ways, you know, we're going after the opportunity rather than let it happen to us. And then the other side of the technology we alluded to before is the technology we use in running our business. So that's Xaxis, Hogarth, KBM, Compete, those types of businesses who are, you know, using technology to collect data about consumers and analyze, optimize it for purposes of sort of campaigns. So ultimately, you know, what are clients trying to do? They're trying to reach the right consumer with the right message at the right time, and it kind of has to be our job to help them do that and drive them through to sales.
So in terms of your traditional set direct competitors, the other holding companies, they haven't followed suit in terms of believing that they can deliver the technology side of that equation. Is that because you're braver, crazier, more forward-thinking? What is it?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Sort of competitor, I don't know. I mean, I think we bought 24/7 in 2007, so it's actually now 6 years ago. And I think people at the time, you know, some people sort of scratched their heads about what we were doing. I think if you now look at Xaxis, which is really born out of a collaboration between Roytman and 24/7, people now understand what it is. You know, we felt that we have to help. We have to apply technology to the process of buying audiences on behalf of our clients, right? That it's good for clients if technology is used to optimize their campaigns. The way technology was used before was to optimize selling media, i.e. that's not really in the client's interest. That's helping the publisher get the most amount of money for their media, or helping the ad network get the most amount of money out of advertisers. So we said we need to invest in technology to help our clients, you know, keep track of their consumers and reach audiences in the most effective way. And it's kind of, I think, squeezed the middleman to some extent, which has been some of the sort of pressure and caused some of the pressure and chit-chat in the industry. So from a publishing perspective, I'd say we need to get closer to the publisher, and if we can connect our clients and publishers, you know, as directly as possible. And more of the ad dollars that get invested will go ultimately to the publisher and to the content that the consumer goes to the publisher to read.
Okay, and just to wrap up, Anatoly, John, where you see your services expanding out your technology?
You know, I think about it, I just think of the math equation. So the digital marketing side of Adobe is about $1 billion business each year. And we're growing that at over 20% per year. And when we sell $1 worth of technology, it typically comes with somewhere between $3 and $10 of services. So if I'm trying to grow at 20% next year, that's $200 million in technology. That means there's somewhere between 600 million and over $1 billion in services that has to be attached to that technology in order for the customer to really get what they want. And there is no way under the sun that Adobe can grow that kind of capacity, nor do we have that DNA. So from a math perspective, Adobe has to focus on enabling the partner ecosystem, making the tools easier for people organically in organizations to become more productive. And it's, I think fundamentally an organization has to pick its DNA. I think a services DNA is different from a technology DNA. And for us, it's a technology-driven DNA.
I want to pick up on the question of efficiency versus beauty. The one example that everybody uses is Amazon today as a best practice. And I don't know if anybody could say that Amazon's website is beautiful. I think it's beautiful because it's very functional. This is where the efficiency comes from, and this is why people like Argos and others, they're dying to become as beautiful as Amazon over time. So it is important, and this is how we view our services, is that we want to make this boring stuff that makes things work beautiful. We want to make sure that they connect to the custom experience that all these companies now find themselves competing against. So it's not just a bank doing a banking website. They're competing now with Google, or will compete with Google at some point, or Amazon. So they need to be able to deliver the best possible custom experience. And yes, in some cases that includes things like supply chain, inventory management, and other boring stuff that somehow needs to connect right now. So this is what we find ourselves trying to do, not necessarily directly competing with agencies, but being in this efficient beauty business.
With that, I want to thank Anatoly, John, and Mark for what I hope you found is a very strong scene setter for the roadmap for marketing services. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.